Everyone, this is a discussion on Fraser Centrepoint Trust proposed acquisition of the 100% interest in North Point City South Wing. Right, so they're basically buying the part of North Point City they don't own, which is the South Wing. Right, you may be interested to know that the South Wing is the newer part of North Point City, and it has better connectivity actually. Right, we'll have a look at the details later. Right, so they agreed to buy at this price, which is over $1 billion, $1.1 billion. Right, so it's quite a big deal. Right, so they are buying it at a NPI yield of 4.5%. Right, at $3,757 per square feet of NLA. Right. Yeah, so I think we won't talk about this too much, right? So North Point City is the biggest mall in Yishun, right? In fact, I think it's the biggest suburban prime mall in the north region, right? Which is actually the growth area of Singapore, right? Where there are new HDB flats and the population is growing there, right? So yeah, the tenure of this building is still 99 years from 2015, right? The South Wing is from 2015, as we'll see later. So there's about quite a long lease left, 89 years remaining. So it's a new part of the mall, right? Right, higher shopper traffic growth here. I wouldn't take this number too seriously because I don't know why they compare from 2020 right? 2020, remember, is likely to be a low base due to COVID, right? So I don't really like looking at this number, but later on we'll look at another number that's more relevant, right? So yeah, we'll look at these numbers in detail, right, as we go down. Right, so well-performing consolidates their interests, alright, under a single ownership, alright, because North Point City is currently owned by different owners, right, to benefit from the North revitalization into a key work, live, play region, right. I just like that region is growing well, alright. We'll see later the exact growth numbers, right. All these things I won't really talk about, alright. The good thing is DPU accreditive, alright, so basically it should improve the DPU even if you don't subscribe, alright, so that's a good thing to the PO, right? So yeah, and I think it makes it the biggest mall owner by NLA in Singapore. Alright, we move on to the performance of NPC, alright, North Point City. You can see that actually there's a very nice growth here, right? But it looks like it's flattening over here, right? But overall, over the last 4 years, is 8% CAGR growth in the net property income, right? Tenant sales, I think this is more important because, and I like this number because it compared to pre-COVID, right? So you can see COVID, there's a dip here, right? For the blue line, 4.8% below, but even though it dipped, right, it's performing better than the average mall in Singapore that is comparable. Right, so generally the numbers are quite impressive, but you can see that the improvement is plateauing, right, just as with the comparable malls in Singapore, right. You could say that they are still improving when the comparable malls in Singapore are actually dropping, you can see 23% to 21.6%, but they are still growing, right, 30.9 to 33.3, right. So the numbers actually look good. I think this is the only number that I'll look at, rather than the shopper traffic, because that one not very I think the comparison to the base wasn't very fair, right. So high population density in this area, right, this is something I didn't know about, right. I didn't know that North Point City, the catchment area, is so dense, right. So that means there's 2 times the national average of people there. That means to say it's just the population density there is just very high, so there's a lot of people. There's like twice as many people in that area as a normal part of Singapore. So not really a good thing if you live there, in my opinion, but definitely a good thing for the mall because more people buy things from there, right. So, and there's a lack of private retail space, right. So low supply. So they're saying high demand, low supply, right. This are old news, I won't talk about CDC vouchers, right. Connectivity, I think we know about it. I mean, the only interesting thing is I think the new north-south corridor may actually improve their numbers, although this one is a bit of a wild card, not very sure, right. So anyway, how they want to improve the mall, this one I'll talk about it in more detail in the next document, right. So they can actually improve the connectivity and they can remove some parts of the mall that I believe can free up more space for rental, right? So this is one of the bigger attributes of the deal that potentially can come about lah, but this will probably come in a few years. The benefits will come in a few years, right? So all these things I'll talk about in the next slide, right? Some of those things I cancel lah. So I was wondering when I saw this slide, how come their MPI is so low as compared to other malls? And then I realized that I think it's because of the inefficiencies between the North and South Wing. Alright, so later we'll talk about this in a bit more detail. Right, so this one is, I think we talked about this lah. There are key developments here going on. There's a growth of this region, so I'm not going to talk about this too much here. I think this one is key, right? The primary catchment area, which is this area around the mall, alright, they expect to be a 20% growth in population by 2031, which means that in 6 years time, right? So 20% growth in 6 years time is, I think, pretty good, right? It probably means your yield or your revenue should go up by 20%, because if we assume there's 20% more people, they should spend 20% more money, right? Right. I don't think that's an unfair extrapolation to make, right? I won't worry about secondary and tertiary so much because it's a bit more extended outwards. Okay, so yeah, won't talk about this. North Point City, pretty big mall, biggest mall in the north. Alright, so I think, yeah, once they acquire this, I think they are the biggest suburban retail landlord, okay, by net lettable area, alright, even bigger than CICT, right? And you can see that it's quite, North Point City is quite a substantial acquisition, right? You can see that in the past, when they owned only the north side, they own 14.4%. Now with the south side also, as part of a portfolio, I mean, this is as a fraction of the total portfolio, it will go up to 26.9%. So 27%, it's more than 1/4 of the REIT. Alright, so North Point City will become a very big impact on FCT in the near future. Right, I won't talk about this. DPO accredited, that's a good thing. Right, the only thing I don't really like is they are using perpetual securities. Right, so they will take loans, right, to increase their gearing. Right, so the gearing will actually go up from 38.5% to 39.8%. But if that is assuming that they take perpetual securities, which they are planning to do. So this increase in gearing, right, is not very fair to look at lah. Alright, so the more fair increase in gearing is actually 42.2%, because if I include perpetual securities as they mentioned here, right, their gearing will actually go up to 42.2%, right? So if they took all the borrowings in normal loans, their gearing will go up to 42.2%, but it's going to only go up to 39.8% because the rest they're taking in perpetual securities, right? The good thing is DPU accreditive by 2%. Yeah, okay, I don't think we'll cover this. Yeah, this one we did talk about it already, right? That's all. Right, so I'm going to talk about this document, right, which actually gives quite a lot of information, right? So this how I figured out that in the past I didn't know this that the South Wing was the newer part, right? Because I don't really live in Yishun, right? So I won't say I know a lot about it, right? So the part that they own is this one, which is quite the old part, right? The new part is 2017, right? So it's the new one. Right, so that's why there's 89 years remaining. Right, so this is a pretty good new mall. Alright, we look at, yeah, the size is even bigger. Right, you can see 300,000 square feet. Right, and it has direct access to Yishun Integrated Transport Hub. So the connectivity of the new part of the mall is actually better than the old part of the mall. So I would think that this part, the rental yield could be higher. Right, so I think that's a very good part of the mall. Right, so we talked about it already that the growth of the South Wing is slowing. Alright, yeah, this one we talked about it in earlier slide. Okay, again, this one I'm not going to talk about it because we saw earlier. Right, so yeah, the population density in this area is very high. We talked about it already. Yeah, so this is basically the main reason why I like FCT over CICT at this point. Alright, it's because of its organic growth from its catchment areas. You can see here just for this one, which is the Yishun side. And they say that 41% of the 11,300 housing units to be completed in the catchment area are 5-room HDB, BTO and private units, with further 4,000 private units to be added in the longer term. Right, so this one they say will add young families and households with above average income. Right, young families tend to spend a lot more because of children. Right, yeah, the cost of buying diapers, milk powder, I mean, I guess they have kids activities over there, maybe even tuition, I'm not sure. Right, or maybe I'm not sure if what's actually inside North Point City, as I don't live in Yishun, but I'm pretty sure there are some mix of all these kind children activities vendors over there that cater to the young families lah, which I think they have greater spending than, for example, and I mean, if you have old people staying, right, probably they don't have so much spending capacity for a mall, right? And of course, if you have households with above average income, they'll spend more, right? So yeah, it looks like a lot of good things for this acquisition. I'm not going to say that I think it's a good acquisition, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Right, I do think that it's quite a double down on the growth of the organic population increase in the north side of Singapore. Right, so you can see this is the part that I was quite fascinated by, because I didn't know about this. Right, so they'll build in different periods. That means to say the connectivity, right? They say it's not very optimized, and they have some space that could be converted to retail NLA. That means to say more rental income, right? So yeah, so basically this is how they see that they can get more space, 8,000 square feet more, right? So potential decanting of underutilized travelator to create new NLA, 1,000 square feet, right? This one is big. Slapping over current courtyard space to create new NLA, 5,000 square feet. Removal of secondary corridors to improve efficiency, 2,000 square feet. So total 8,000 more square feet can be created, right? So all this is more rent for the FCT, right? So they believe they can improve the mix of tenants to improve the shopper experience and maybe improve spending as well, right? And they can do operational efficiencies lah. So I think, yeah, all these things like bulk contract terms for security and cleaning services, this should probably drop their overall percentage in terms of operating costs, right? Yeah, and hopefully they can make all this more efficient. You can see that they have their own mechanical systems. I'm not sure if this can be made more efficient, right? Apparently they say can, right? They say that consolidation of independent chiller plant rooms to a single system, right, to serve the entire North Point City, right? I guess this will save you money, right? So quite interesting acquisition. I do think I like it. Yeah, so this answers the question of why I saw in the PowerPoint slides, how come North Point City is less efficient than comparable malls? So I think it's because of this issue between the new and the old parts of North Point City, right? So hopefully they can fix this, and this number can go higher lah, at least go to 42.2 lah, right? But with FCT's capability, I do believe they can do better, right? Like I said, it's becoming a very big proportion of the REIT, right, at now 26.9%. So it's something that we have to monitor closely lah. That means to say we have to watch North Point City's performance more closely, right? So yeah, this one is interesting, right? So 2027 there will be a north-south corridor, right? That will improve the travel time from Yishun to the city by 30 minutes, right? This will make Yishun a more popular place to live in, right? Because you have better access, right? So yeah, 20% growth of population, we talked about this before. I thought this was a very big deal. Yeah, and of course, this is resilient spending. This is one of the reasons why in the past, right, I think last year or maybe the year before, actually before CICT acquire the Ion Orchard, right, I would have preferred CICT marginally over FCT. But now with the acquisition of Ion Orchard, although it provides growth of CICT, I do believe that CICT will perform well in the near future. However, this also makes CICT more vulnerable to economic downswings. So who is more stable for now? I think it's FCT. And I also like FCT's organic growth a lot. Buying the South Wing of North Point City does appear that FCT is doubling down on this organic growth, right? They're taking an opportunity to take a big swing and try to catch the full upside from the organic growth on the north side of Singapore, right? I like the acquisition. I don't really like them taking perpetual securities for buying the mall. I rather they, maybe offer more units. Maybe they're afraid people won't take it up, but frankly, I wouldn't mind. Right? So again, all this is not investment advice, all right? And I thank you for listening. All right, with that, goodbye.